Thank you so much for joining our second Playbook session. Super excited to have you here. My name is Julian Alvarado. I run content at Coefficient, and I have the opportunity to play with AI all day. I'm joined by my colleague, Victoria Wong. She is our very talented solution engineer. Just to do a little housekeeping, this session is going to be about 45 minutes long. It's meant to be like back and forth between us all. So please drop your questions in the chat, raise your hand, or just wait until Q&A. We'll try our best to answer them in real time. I'm very, very excited to be talking to Lachlan today. Lachlan is the sales operation director at the Learning Technology Group. And today he'll be talking to us about lead scoring and attribution with multiple entities. Lachlan, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
So, hi everyone, I'm Lachlan. As Julian said, sales ops director at LTG. A bit about LTG, just see the context, because it does come into what we discuss later on. LTG is a group of businesses we grow through acquisition. A busy year for us is buying 5 companies. At the moment, we're 10 businesses, all on the same Salesforce org. So for anyone out there using Salesforce with multi-brand, you'll know probably some of the challenges I'm going to showcase today. So I guess my background was once upon a time in customer service and sales, ended up managing teams in customer service and sales, and now I'm into the sales operations / RevOps role. Probably a better description to call me RevOps at this point rather than sales ops. But we haven't modernized our job titles yet over here at LTG. My background is been for the last kind of 10 years in sales ops, most of which has been around CPQ, Salesforce, CPQ, and Aptus / Conga CPQ, and now anything lead to cash. So we work very closely in partnership with marketing operations who help with top of funnel. Once it's Salesforce and beyond, it kind of becomes my remit. So I guess we spoke about career highlights was moving country. If you can't tell, I'm Australian. Moving over to the UK, getting into this sales ops role from a CS, and so the sales role. From Coefficient point of view, obviously with that multi-brand environment, the biggest pain point we've been able to solve is dealing with multi-brand complexity at scale, allowing everyone the flexibility they want while giving the accuracy that we need across the group. So I'll go through some use cases today that'll line up with that. The next thing we're working on is we've had Coefficient, I want to say about 18 months now. We've done lots of individual businesses needing reporting and making some really, complex reporting for them. The goal for this year is really to collate that into a catalog and produce it for everybody. So every brand, no matter who it is, can go into the catalog and get the reporting metrics out. So that's kind of the goal for this year. But I asked what my home automation wish was going to be. Now I'm a useless cook, so I'm going to say an AI chef / shopper as well, because when I go to the shops, I can't even think of a meal I want to put together, even if I'm in front of all the bits of the shops that I need.
Oh, yeah.
So definitely, AI chef would be my goal.
They definitely have some stuff like that. I know for sure. Like, I think there's one thing I saw where you can just take like a picture of what you have in your fridge, and it'll automatically give you recipes and stuff.
But then you also need the talent to cook it. That's the bit I'm also lacking. Step part.
Yeah.
In Boston Dynamics to step up. No, get me a chef.
Cool, awesome. Before we start getting into the main use case, can you walk us through a little bit more how you're using Coefficient? The next slide, show.
Yeah, so we use Coefficient on a lot of things. We have a pretty small and nimble team of team members in sales ops, so we need to be able to scale things and do complicated things with very little, well, not very little, but limited resources. So we also pilot things in Coefficient Google Sheets first before we actually go into Salesforce configuration, sometimes, depending on what it is. So if we're trying to achieve something fairly technically challenging, we might model it out in Excel and then bring it into Salesforce. Or we keep it in Google Sheets and use Coefficient for that. So some of those use cases are limited to 5 here. We're probably somewhere in the 20s at the moment, are as follows. So lead grading, which we're going to get into a lot today, so I won't dwell on that for too long. Lead channel attribution is the next piece, which is where we have multiple Salesforce exports and we are trying to attribute sales opportunities, etc., to opportunities through lots of different data points, not just the ones you can think of, the typical ones. The next major one is sales commission. So we have a lot of commission requirements from the businesses. So we have lots of complicated interconnections with ERP systems, Salesforce, various other places for sales commission as well. So we produce live user feeds for people on their commission, so they know at any given moment they can just go to their report and they see exactly what commission they've earned year to date, but also what they're up for this month, and what they're due next month, etc. Business performance is the other bit, which is pretty much just analytics across a group, win rates, standard KPIs like cross-sell, upsell, new sale ARR, etc. We are in the SaaS space primarily, so a lot of the things I'll be talking today about will be software-related metrics. Then system alignment, that's the other one. So we have lots of different systems across LTG. So we have exports coming into Google Sheets, and then we merge them and marry them up against other systems like NetSuite, invoicing tools, prospecting tools, etc. So they're kind of the couple of buckets there. Another one to discuss briefly is we use Coefficient for M&A activity. So whether we're doing divestiture or we're doing acquisitions, we'll use a standard set of tools that then feed the data, and then we use Coefficient for loading, exporting, cleaning, that sort of thing. So depending on the quality of the data, we might use Coefficient for cleaning up as well.
Awesome. Just a quick reminder to everybody before we start jumping in, please feel free to ask questions as we go along. But with facts, let's get into the meat of today. Lead score.
Cool. So lead score. Now, some people call it lead score, some people call it lead grade. I'll try and define the difference, and I'll probably mix them up as I'm presenting this. However, we have at the moment, if you've got any Salesforce users out there, we use account engagement, which was previously called Pardot, where we have a score, right? The score is an engagement score. How many assets have they interacted with? That's great for when you know when people are interacting with your assets a lot. That's good, right? Someone interacting with you a lot probably means they're quite interested. But we didn't have a dimension of lead quality or matched ICP or matched a GDM strategy. So what we wanted to do is have a mechanism where we could define our ICP for each of the businesses. Then that, which is very different across the 10. We have some of our businesses are enterprise client only. Some of them are SMB. So obviously how they grade those elements are vastly different. So we couldn't have one master sheet that said, oh, multiply the number by this, if there's 10 points, etc., for every business. So we needed that flexibility to be able to do that for every single brand totally differently, which we're currently doing. So how we approached that was spoke to each brand, figured out what their ICP was. They've got a GM strategy for each business, so we basically extracted it from that. From that, we then determined, okay, what data points do we have? What do we want to get? What do we want to add? How can we get them? So we needed to find out all those metrics, model it per brand, then export the data, map it, run the model, load it back into Salesforce. From there, we did other things like send it to Google Ads so that we can then retarget. Then we test and we iterate. So we're probably on, depending on the brand, probably on the third or fourth version at the moment. But the idea is it's meant to be a continually reviewed thing. Again, we work very closely with marketing operations, say, okay, what else can we get? Or we might work with other tools. What can we enrich? So it's kind of we also use progressive profiling as well, which we'll talk about in a sec. So the tools for that, Coefficient, of course, Salesforce, of course, Google Sheets, and then Google Ads. So they're the 4 tools that get used. I'm explaining all of this, and it sounds really complicated, but when I show you the demo, it's actually fairly simple once you know kind of how to get there. So the question is, how do we do it? So as we were going through, we were figuring out our pain points. As anyone kicking off a project knows, you have to go through this part first to figure out what you're actually trying to solve for. So as I said, we're on a single org, so one Salesforce org. So if one brand says, hey, I want this new field specific to me, it means I have to make 10 of them, right? Which doesn't work. So we're on a single Salesforce org, 10 very different businesses, 10 very different targets, 10 very different ICPs. So we needed to have something flexible that could go for the current 10. And who knows, next year we might buy another 5 companies. We don't know. So we need to build something that can scale up regardless of how many businesses we have now, or with the intention that in the future we'll have a different number.
Why is it so challenging? Or I guess, why can't you just set up all of the, 10 different business, or, basically do that, set up a different instance or whatever it is for each one of your companies? Like, why is that so challenging to do in Salesforce itself?
Well, the goal, I guess, is the first question, right? So the goal is, why you have it on one org rather than just have 10. There's a cost element to that, but the main thing for us is cross-sell. If we have a client in one business, we want to cross-sell them to another. So we want to have it all in one place so that we can pitch new products to an existing client base. We want to prospect to clients and pitch them more than one product is the goal, right? We buy complementing products, not competing, complementing, so that we can have it all in one place. Also simplifies things, right? You're doing administration in one place rather than 10. So there are benefits to having your own org, but most of the time we are trying to merge them onto a single contract, a single instance, because it does the administration, the back end. If I had to do something really complicated, I want to do it really complicated once, not 10 times. So that's the primary goal. If you had a team of 50 admins, Salesforce admins, sure, you could have 10 instances, but the more instances you had, the more overhead you have. So you're giving yourself technical debt by maintaining multiple instances when you could just have it in one place. Here's the quick answer. I could go into a more detailed one if you're interested. That's the main goal for us. So when we acquire, we generally acquire and then we get them onto the central tech stack, or we'll keep them on their own depending on what is best for the business at the time. So yeah, additional pain points was the brands wanted to control this themselves. So this is non-technical people wanting to control something that's quite technical. So if I built this solution in Salesforce, I would have to give them administration access to be able to manipulate the points, the scoring in flight. So not ideal. I don't want to give people admin access unless they absolutely need it. So that was part of the requirement, was that they wanted to have the model and be able to manipulate it. So, actually that, industry isn't working for us. I'm going to reduce the points on that one and I'm going to increase it on this industry. That's an example. Segmentation changes. So it's about extending that technical team out to the non-technical users, but still maintaining that control centrally. We also wanted the ability to model things. So we've got the live version running at any given moment. Plus, we also have a modeled version. So if the team wanted to just see what the outputs would be, we have 2 running concurrently. Doing that in Salesforce wouldn't be possible. You kind of have a live version or not. So that's another reason why we wanted to go with like a kind of external visual aspect to it. The other benefit of having it in Google Sheets is everyone can see the dimensions. They can see what's happening. If you can read a simple formula in Excel, you can kind of know what's going on, which I'll show you when we do the demo. Final thing, then from my point of view, was Salesforce limits. Obviously, everyone has to abide by Salesforce limits. There's certain size limitations we have on that. And to give you an idea, the one we're going to talk about today is one of our brands called PeopleFluent. They have 10,000 different metrics that go into lead grading. As an example, times that by 10, times that by the number of permutations you could have had, number of combinations you could have had, it ends up being a lot of records in the system. So definitely something for consideration there. So the solution, as any Salesforce / CRM owner would say, they want their source of truth to be that Salesforce instance or to be that CRM. So that was goal 1. We also brought in progressive profiling. So for the marketers out there, you want to limit every time you ask a question on a form when we're capturing data from somebody, the more questions you have, the less submissions you get. So we have an element called progressive profiling where we ask a bare minimum number of questions. Then when they revisit, we add on a couple more questions. Then they revisit, we add on a couple more. So we're progressively building up the profile of that individual. We also looked at data enrichment, which we use through prospecting tools and rep interaction. So obviously as the salespeople are speaking to these people, they're obviously adding more data points to the system. Employee size, industry, anything we didn't have initially that do go into our ICP. We gave the power users the ability to model and iterate. As I mentioned before, we had a kind of live version and a hypothesis testing model that can run concurrently. And then if the hypothesis testing or the model works better, we then replace the primary and we roll out from there. That's how we get to the sort of 5th, 6th, 7th version that we currently have in some of the brands. Then we integrated the scoring and retargeting through Google Ads. So that's what we wanted. That was part of the solution. The outcome is we can now measure lead quality, shall we say, in terms of ICP match. So gives us more accurate Google Ads, improves the ROI measurement, makes the marketing team more accountable to what efforts they're doing. Because if they're not getting the right ICP, what's the point? Let's retarget that. We can then do trend over time. So we have a trend over a year or whatever, and we can look at the bands in which the match is coming back. Is that match getting better or worse? Did a particular event or a particular strategy change improve or make things worse in terms of the ICP match leads we're getting? On top of that, we solve the problem of all brands can have something unique without impacting my Salesforce resourcing, which is very important to me as the admin or the architect. So we have fake vacancy in here. So this is our multi-brand environment. This individual has interest in a couple of brands. At the moment, they're interested in one of our businesses called OpenLMS and another one called PeopleFluent. So this is the basics. We have certain data points from these people, like country. We have industry, employee count, which is very important to PeopleFluent, a sector, whether they're in the EU, anything else that needs to go into the calculation. So this is our core data source. What we then do is we build Salesforce reporting that picks up any lead that has been edited in the last 7 days that has interest in this brand. So we have fields tracking whether they're engaged with this brand or not. So we're looking at the last 7 days. The reason we don't bring all of it is because of the current count. I think I have 700,000 leads in the system. They all got counted once, they got calculated once, and then we just take anything that got edited. Because unless one of those dimensions is changing, there's no point recalculating them. So we pull this one master load the first time, then a live feed every 7 days. That's filtered to the brand, et cetera, et cetera. So that leads us to the first part, which is this is the user accessible mapping table. We basically go through and we define, for this brand, I think we only have about 5 dimensions that go into it. We're basically saying, if it's this value, give us this grade. Now, our grades are done in points. Some people do A plus, B plus, C minus, all that sort of stuff. But to be honest, I like numbers better. So we did it based on numbers. You can then, obviously, once you get a final points system, you can then turn that into letters if you wish. But I mean, we didn't because we didn't want to. But yeah, so basically, this is the user one. So as I said, we centralize we don't centralize the ownership of this. This goes to the business. The business can make the decisions on this. We have marketers in each business that decide how this point system works. So largely we have Salesforce value, grade, Salesforce value, grade, Salesforce value, grade, etc. Right? This can go sideways as long as it needs to, and it can go down as long as it needs to. Most of the ones we have, the bigger ones are going to be job title, job category, that sort of thing. We might have a couple of thousand in there. The sales teams can go into this, edit this whenever they want. We then do, with the joy of Google Sheets. I used to be Excel, and now I'm slowly getting won over with Google Sheets. But what we do then is we import that range into the working file. The reason I recommend doing this is so that you don't have people interacting with your live file. You don't want them breaking your file. They can break their mapping table, that's fine. Worst thing is some people will get the wrong score, but you don't want them affecting your load file. So first thing is we bring that range in, bring it across exactly how it was in their file. Live feed as usual. Then we use coefficient. So this is where coefficient starts kicking in. So this is where we have our scheduled import. I've taken out all of the PAI in this so I can show you this. What this is doing is every night, I believe, every morning at 6 a.m., this data refreshes, comes in. We get all the pertinent fields that we need to be able to do the calculation. We then go across to the side and we have a grading system. So now this particular brand only has the 6 point systems. So then we know what the existing score is, recalculate every single time. Again, this is limited to the last 7 days, so it's not a huge amount of data. We probably have a few thousand in here per brand. And then we figure out the score. We say, right, does the existing score on the record, has it changed? If yes, these are all true. So these have already been loaded. I think we loaded them today. We match whether the existing score matches the current score. If it does, we don't look at it. However, if it differs, we have a second feature of coefficient, which is the export to Salesforce feature. So within this, we have a query that is going to that table and going, hey, any of these rows don't line up. We need to load them and update them. There's 2 data points we bring in. One is the score, one is the number of data points. So if you have a really high score, but we're doing that on 1 data point, that might actually be a good ICP fit, but maybe we don't know the industry. We might know the job title. Maybe they're a CEO of something. So they get a lot of points. But if we don't have industry, we don't have number of employees, don't have anything else, they're still going to have a low score. So the 2 things we do bring in is the score and the number of data points. From there, we then have a second schedule that runs, that then goes and updates these records every morning. So in this instance, this is my test account. What I did before this call was go down and change the number of employee range up to the largest tier we have, which has increased their score from 285 And now we're saying, actually, they've been upgraded to 375. So if you can imagine a rep is interacting with this record and they change employee count, they change the email domain, they change whatever the dimensions are, pulled into the report the following morning, scores will get updated. There is a question about whether we want to do this more frequently. Do we want to do it like hourly or anything? At the present moment, we don't have a need to do it that frequently, but we could if we wanted to. Nothing restricting us from doing so. That's pretty much the building blocks. Standard import. I don't know if you guys need to see this. If you're already clients, you probably know how all of this works. Standard import. We occasionally use filtering here. So we might have one master report in Salesforce and then filter by brand, for example, by using the filtering in here. Means you don't have to have one report for everybody. Then on the load function, pretty simple. Schedule to load, set it up, walk away. Another thing we also do is give the ability to backdate. So if they go and change their model and they go, actually, can you go and recalculate everything? We can also run that too. All we do is change the parameters of the base report to be last 7 days to all time, run it again. One thing to know, I suppose, in this exercise is if you're interacting with leads, and this is a feature actually Coefficient implemented for us when I asked them about it, make sure you check this little box, because if you don't, it's going to try and reassign a lead. But yeah, that's all it is. It's pretty simple design when you get down to it. You're pulling the data, you're assigning points, you're loading the points into the system, then you feed that information to the various endpoints. I mean, for us, what this has now let us do is, I can't show you them because it's got private data on there, but one of the things we can see is the trending, which is quite useful. You can say, okay, marketing team, let's change how we're doing this because we're getting too many low, no match leads. And then over time, you can start seeing the points going up and up and up. What we've done is banded these per brand. So 100 points or less is a bad match. 100 to 250 is kind of an okay match. 250 to 400 is a good match. 400 plus is like the perfect person. So we group it like that in the reporting in Salesforce so we can see it live there. I think that's it, really. Pretty straightforward.
Awesome. Yeah.
But very powerful. I mean, we use this across the entire group now. We feed this through to anybody who does metrics. So quite useful for anyone out there.
Yeah, that's actually going to be a question of mine. Like, so how, Xanagoli has the teams that you work with responsible to this workflow?
Yeah, good. So what it does is it gives some gravitas to the sales rep saying, they're not a good fit. Why aren't they a good fit? Oh, I can see in your score. Actually, yeah, you got loads of, under 200 points kind of scoring system. So we know before they even work the lead, or more likely after the fact that worked them, that actually, yeah, they weren't a good match in the first place. So that's been quite useful. Also, from a marketing point of view, the sales team come back to the marketers and go, hey, we need some better quality, or actually give me some really good ones from this channel. Let's really push some strategy into that channel. So we've been able to pivot more quickly to a match of the ICP through sales and marketing through using this. It feeds into any further future strategy that we're doing. If we go to like events, for example, one of the things we do quite a lot is go to events. And are the people going to those events the right people? Is that event worth going to? That kind of thing helps us answer those questions because we can know other people from our industry, our sectors, our verticals, going to those events. Should we go there next year or not? So that kind of thing has helped feed into it, but it really stretches across, I would say, all of our marketing metrics now. And it helps give the sales team that ability to have some answers to either good conversion rates, poor conversion rates, big rejection rates, that sort of thing.
I'll open up the floor to anybody else. Folks, have any questions?
I have a question.
Yeah, so
Oh, cool. So it was great that you've shared your use case of being able to import data and then being able to schedule it, automate the exports. You also mentioned using different systems like NetSuite and also doing, analysis on like your sales performance, also doing analysis for sales commissions. So how do you generally use Coefficient to do these additional use cases?
yeah, it depends which one we're doing. We may have, depends on the level of control we have of the external systems as well. So we don't have system admin access of like NetSuite, which we don't. We get the finance teams to schedule their imports to the Google Sheet. So then we'll do joining, we'll match up on IDs because there's IDs that float around everywhere, or we'll do our manual joining. So that's the most common use case there. We also we're a software business as well, a collection of software businesses. So another use case we have is overages. So if we have our front end team tracking the user count per client on their front end, they'll then dump that data either into S3 buckets or directly into Google Sheets. We'll go and pick it up, join it up with the sales data that we have in Salesforce. Okay, you've paid for 1,000, but you're actually using 1,100 right now. There's 100 user overage we need to sort out with this client. And then we trigger notifications and stuff from that too. Whether that's the notifications coming directly out of Coefficient or it's notifications coming out of when we feed it back into Salesforce. We're using Coefficient as kind of the conduit to get things to and from our systems, as well as doing that reconciliation piece. So it's kind of a mix of everything, really. We use most systems can get something into Google Sheets or at least into S3, in which case we might use Zapier to go pick it up from S3, depending on how we need to get it in there. But the ultimate goal when someone's asking me to do something complicated is, okay, can you get me the data Google Sheets? If yes, cool, I can look up everything else. So we've got some fairly complex functionality we've built with the developers that we send notifications to the front end now using Coefficient. Lots of use. That's what I'll say. I think 85, but there's plenty more I can give you a list of if you're interested.
We love to hear it. We love to hear that, you've had so many use cases, so many creative ways of just being able to use Coefficient, not just with yourself, but like with different teams. And also that you've discovered alerts. We also, for a lot of the sales teams that deal with sales commissions, they often do Slack alerts or email alerts to individually send commission reports. Have you ever tested anything like that? Just variable alerts in general, or just to like a set individual or a set group?
We do the based on the field value changing to X. We do alerts based on that. There's static recipients, I believe, on the ones we're using it for. It's not dynamic recipients yet, but I have seen your Slack integration come up. We're a bit strange here. We have like 7 different Slack instances across our group, and there's
Oh,
not
wow.
one that everyone. Yeah, because whenever we buy a company, they've got Slack. They're already engaging their customers. They're like, we can't get off the Slack. So yeah, we haven't gone down the Slack avenue yet. We're using mainly email notifications at the moment, purely because we have so many different Slacks we would need to integrate with, and it would be need to be conditionally connecting to a different instance. That's why we haven't gone that channel yet. But yeah, we saw it come up the other day actually, and we're like, oh, we should probably do that once to simplify those models. Again, Julian, answering your question around why we have 1 instance instead of 10, that's another example. Sending a Slack instance to one place would make life a lot easier.
Well, if you ever try variable alerts, let us know what you think.
I'll let you know. We do use the query option. So writing our own custom queries rather than pulling a Salesforce report in. We use that quite a lot.
Nice.
So when we're trying to go over the 5 object limit that we have with Salesforce, we use the query option within the Coefficient import value from Salesforce to get quite complicated values. We use Workbench and we use Developer Console and we use a few other things to do that. But when we need to repeat it, we use it for Coefficient so we can get the data out, clean it up, send it back.
Right. Yeah, that's definitely a less common one to hear. So it's always interesting to see when other people are using it, because it's always for something very complex and very niche.
Yeah.
So it's cool to see.
Well, we have Salesforce, we have the CPQ infrastructure. And if anyone on the call has used CPQ before, you know that the objects are very interconnected and very complicated. So for example, the last use case we had is find anyone with this product on their current open renewal and go back 5 contracts worth to find the value on the 5th before that. You can't do that with Salesforce reporting. You have to do it through a query. So we use, for example, Coefficient to export that and do the comparisons. And we also use we'll have a live feed plus the query, and then we'll do joins against them to figure out what data we need to fill in. And the other one, as I mentioned before, was data cleansing. When we buy companies, their systems are totally different to ours, and we've got to merge them into our system. So to fill gaps, we have to do quite a lot of calculation, and we don't want to do it lots and lots of times. We prefer to do it once and then leave it. Another reason why we use querying logic. Another one, actually, I'm thinking about that, is aggregation. So when we did have multiple Salesforce instances, we were pulling from multiple instances onto one Google Sheet, so then we could standardize the reporting across them. We also have that for lead sharing is probably the easiest way to describe it. When we're trying to cross-sell beyond our initial group that has access to the central Salesforce instance. And lots more. I can give.
For sure. Well, we have some folks dropping off of Teams, so if there aren't any more questions, we'll leave it at that. As a quick reminder, we will be sending out the recording of this, so check your inboxes in a few. Otherwise, thank you all for joining, and thank you, Lachlan, for leading the session.
No worries.
All right, take care, everybody.
No worries, guys. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.